Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo 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 Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author.
Okay, we don't need to bring the camera.
Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat yuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version, Text 39. Text 39, Chapter 9. Today is July 23rd, 2021.
Chapter 9.
Antarhita
Adita
Indriya Artaya
Indriya Ataya
Haraye
Araye
Vihita Anjali
Ita Anjali
Sarvabhuta
Sarvabhuta
Maya
Maya
Vishvam
Vishvam
Dasarja
Yaksha
Idam
Idam
Sa
Sa
Purvavat
Uvavat
Antarhitendriyartaya
Charitendriyataya
Haraye Vihitanjali
Araye Vitanjali
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Sasarjedam Sapurvavat
Dasajedam Sapurvavat
Antarhitendriyartaya
Charitendriyataya
Haraye Vihitanjali
Araye Vihitanjali
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Sasarjedam Sapurvavat
Dasajedam Sapurvavat
Antarhitendriyartaya
Charitendriyataya
Haraye Vihitanjali
Araye Vihitanjali
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Sasarjedam Sapurvavat
Dasajedam Sapurvavat
Antarhitendriya Yartaya
Antaritendriyataya
Haraye Vihitanjali
Araye Vihitanjali
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Saharjadam Sapurvavat
Dasajedam Sapurvavat Antaritendriyataya
Antarhitendriyartaya
Araye Vihitanjali
Haraye Vihitanjali
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Dasajedam Sapurvavat
Saharjadam Sapurvavat
Antaritendriyartaya
Antaritendriyataya
Haraye Vihitanjali
Araye Vihitanjali
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam
Dasarjedam Sapurvavat
Dasajedam Sapurvavat
If anyone else, this is text 39, chapter 9, canto 2. If anyone else would like to recite the verse.
Antarhitendriyartaya
Antarhitendriyartaya
Haraye Vihitanjali
Haraye Vitanjali
Sarvabhutamayo Vishvam
Sarvabhutamayo Vishvam
Sasarjadam Sapurvava
Sasarjedam Sapurvavat Antarhita Antarhita
Antarhintra
on the disappearance
On the disappearance.
Indriya Artaya
Indriya.
Indriya Artaya
unto the personality of Godhead, the objective of all senses.
Unto the personality of Godhead, the objective of all senses.
Haraye
Araye.
unto the Lord.
Unto the Lord.
Vihita Anjali
Vihita Anjali.
in folded hands.
In folded hands.
Sarvabhuta
Sarvabhuta.
all living entities.
All living entities.
Maya
Maya.
full of.
Full of.
Vishvam
Vishvam.
the universe.
The universe.
The Sarja
Sasarja.
created.
Created.
Idam
Idam.
this.
This.
Sa
Sa.
he Brahmaji.
He Brahmaji.
Purvavat
Purvavat.
exactly like before.
Exactly like before.
Translation. On the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the object of transcendental enjoyment for the senses of devotees, Brahma, with folded hands, began to recreate the universe full with living entities as it was previously. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is the object for fulfilling the senses of all living entities. Illusioned by the glaring reflection of the external energy, the living entities worship the senses instead of engaging them properly in fulfilling the desires of the Supreme. In the Hari Bhakti Sudodaya 13.2, there is the following verse. Akshnopalam tvadvishadarshanam hi tanopalam tvadvishadatra sangha jivapalam tvadvishakirtanam hi sudurlabha bhagavata hi loke. O devotee of the Lord, the purpose of the visual sense is fulfilled simply by seeing you. And to touch your body is the fulfillment of bodily touch. The tongue is meant for glorifying your qualities, because in this world a pure devotee of the Lord is very difficult to find. Originally, the senses of the living entity were awarded for this purpose, namely, to engage them in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or that of his devotees. But the conditioned souls, illusioned by the material energy, became captivated by sense enjoyment. Therefore, the whole process of God consciousness is meant to rectify the conditional activities of the senses and to re-engage them in the direct service of the Lord. Lord Brahma thus engaged his senses in the Lord by recreating the conditioned living entities to act in the recreated universe. This material universe is thus created and annihilated by the will of the Lord. It is created to give the conditioned soul a chance to act, to return home back to Godhead, and servants like Brahmaji, Naradaji, Vyasaji, and their company become busy with the same purpose of the Lord, to reclaim the conditioned souls from the field of sense gratification and return them to the normal stage of engaging the senses in service of the Lord. Instead of doing so, that is, converting the actions of the senses, The impersonalists began to make the conditioned souls senseless, and the Lord also senseless. That is improper treatment for the conditioned souls. The diseased condition of the senses may be treated by curing the defect, but not uprooting the senses altogether. When there is some disease in the eyes may be cured to see properly. Plucking out the eyes is no treatment. Similarly, the whole material disease is based on the process of sense gratification, and liberation from the diseased condition is re-engagement of the senses to see the beauty of the Lord, hear his glories, and act on his account. Thus, Brahmaji created the universal activities again. Om Ganatimirandasya Gunanjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadigora Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatayani Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2 Chapter 9 Text 39 Antarhitendriyartaya Haraye Vihitanjali Sarvabhuta Mayo Vishvam Sasajadam Sapurvavat. On the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the object of transcendental enjoyment for the senses of devotees, Brahma, with folded hands, began to recreate the universe, full with living entities as it was previously. So Prabhupada starts his purport: the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is the object for fulfilling the senses of all living entities. Illusioned by the glaring reflection of the external energy, the living entities worship the senses instead of engaging them properly in fulfilling the desires of the Supreme. Okay, so this term, the living entities worship the senses. I mean, people might just not just like, okay, as far as this term worship is a provocative term, maybe a provoking reaction. I don't worship anyone. Yes, like, yeah, I don't worship anyone. And okay, but so just like the propensity is there, we're going to serve. Our choice is how to direct our service. We're going to seek happiness and bliss. Our choice is how to direct that propensity. We're going to strive for knowledge and eternity. We're going to strive for satisfaction in relationships. It's not whether we're going to do it, it's about how we're going to direct those propensities. So similarly, worship, we can understand as that to deep honor, deep respect. So someone could say, well, I don't worship anyone or anything, but that's never true. So right? So Prabhupada uses this term, the living entities worship the senses. So like means just like we can, I worship my Lord. Okay, so let's say if my tongue and my belly, they have a demand and a command, right? Then I have a worshipful relationship with them. Okay, so we need to understand this, right? If let's say my mind just wants to think of something like, yes, all my attention should go there. Yes, my worshipful Lord, my eyes want to see something. My tongue and belly want something. Yes, your order is my command. Just tell me how high you want me to jump. Okay, so we're material life means we have a worshipful relationship with our mind and our senses. Okay, so and they are, yes, they are rather vicious masters. It's not like, okay, tongue, belly, mind, eyes, I've satisfied you. Now you're peaceful. No. And it's like they keep whipping. They keep whipping, and we're still like, yes, please. Yeah, I'm sure it'll make me happy if I. So okay. So then the recommendation here, is to transfer our propensity for worship rather than to our senses and mind. Well, there's a verse from Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada quotes a lot. Sarvopadi vinirmutam tatparat nirmalam. Rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchita. So a name for Krishna is Rishikesh, means the master of the senses. So we direct our propensity for gratifying senses to gratify the master of the senses. Then we're satisfied. Then we have a truly kind and good master. Krishna, Rishikesh. Rishikesh is a name for Krishna. And so that's, I get that as a theme, but not the main theme here that we're yet to. Therefore, the whole process of God consciousness is meant to rectify the conditional activities of the senses and to re-engage them in the direct service of the Lord. So sometimes, like a philosophical question is there. It's there, for example, in the prayers by the personified Vedas chapter of Krishna book, 10th canto, that, okay, well, we have material senses. How can we engage them spiritually? We have material senses, so how can? So the answer given, well, in many places, including this purport, and so Prabhupada writes, he answers the question. It's a profound philosophical question. Originally, the senses of the living entity were awarded for this purpose, namely to engage them in the transcendental loving service of the Lord or that of his devotees. But the conditioned souls, illusioned by the material energy, became captivated by sense enjoyment. So basically, how can we engage our power of speech and sight and arms and legs? How can we engage our material senses in spirit? So the answer simply is that's exactly what they were designed to do, to engage in spirit. That's precisely what they were designed to do. Now, we're not forced to do it. We can continue to implicate ourselves further in the prison house into solitary confinement in a straitjacket. But that's what our tongue is designed to do, to taste prasad and to vibrate Srimad Bhagavatam. And there's the Prabhupada often cites the example of Maharaj Ambarish, Savai Mana Krishna Dhira Govinda Vakunti. Yes, it's several verses. With Maharaj Ambarish, in specific ways, he engaged his mind described. He engaged his sense of touch in embracing the devotees of the Lord. He engaged his sense of smell and smelling the fragrance of the tulasi flowers. So he engaged all the senses, and that's what our senses are meant to do. That's why, in a sense, it's not a big mystery. That's exactly what they're designed to do. We can choose to misuse them. Then Prabhupada, Prabhupada's mission, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. He came to the West, which is full of impersonalism and voidism, and to give this process of bhakti, which positively engages the senses. The principle is that the very substratum of existence there is personhood, absolute sentience thou hast proved, in personal calamity thou hast moved, and so that's a part of a poem that Prabhupada wrote to his spiritual master Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. So sentient personhood means senses. So at the very foundation of existence. So this Bhagavatam asserts that it's not nothing. It's not the undifferentiated Brahman effulgence. It's not matter, but it's transcendental personhood. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oh my Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva. All-pervading personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. I offer my respectful obeisances to you. Vasudeva means all-pervading person. So that's the very substratum of existence. And we have senses because our very source has senses. And so Prabhupada wonderfully uses the English language here, that the impersonalist began to make the conditioned soul senseless, and the Lord also senseless. This is improper treatment for the conditioned soul. And then Prabhupada goes on to use a rather ghastly analogy about the eye. Okay, so there's a way to cure, but it's just like with any disease. Any disease, it's like like if someone has a head cold, well, we could chop off the head and then the head cold would go away. Okay, and essentially that's kind of like the non-personal voidist approach, right? To just eliminate, kill the senses, but that's not going to be that's. I mean, it could lead to some sense of peace because of some detachment from the slave master of material desires. So that's there, and that's to be acknowledged. But it could also lead to a sort of craziness because we got spiritual senses, and to be satisfied, they all need to be engaged. So bhakti is special in that way. It's not about chopping off the head or plucking out the eye. It's about, Prabhupada uses the term changing the account. Okay, so we're gonna use our senses rather than for the gratification of our material ego and senses for Krishna's account. And then Rishi Kena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchita. Then we come alive. Then our consciousness is sharp. And we all have experience to the extent that we endeavor to indulge our senses, more sleep than we need, more eating than we need, more internet than is required, etc., etc. To the extent that we indulge our senses in any way, we feel dull. I can use I statements. I feel dull, right? And then, as Rishabhadev recommends to his sons, headed by Bharat Maharaj, Deham Nayam Dehu Deham Bajan Reloke Kastan Kaman Arheti Bid Bujamye Tapo Divyam Puchaki Nisakam Shudedyas Madhuma Sokyam Tvananta. So he's encouraging, don't be satisfied with the quality of enjoyment that's available to the stool eaters like pigs and dogs. Go for the real enjoyment, and that requires tapodivyam, voluntarily, no force, but voluntarily performing transcendental austerity, which means yes, giving up the immediate gratification to cultivate the capacity of using the mind and the senses in the service of the source of all senses. And then the result, and over the course of a lifetime, or we can experience over the course of a minute, that we do some austerity that's directed in a divine way, like using our morning hours for chanting Hare Krishna, discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. We feel ourselves coming alive. We feel our senses coming alive. We do a little bit to reduce sleep and read some Bhagavad Gita or have some kirtan. We experience ourself and our senses fully coming alive. So the process that, as Krishna says, Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam shushukam kartumaviyam. It's directly experienced. We indulge our senses on the account of Janasya Moho Yamaha Mamet, on account of serving the illusion. I am this body and I'll be happy by satisfying this body. Then we feel dead. We're dragging ourselves. We're dull-minded, and turn the spiral around in one moment. We could sometimes feel like, I've fallen down in such a deep pit, and maybe I have such a deep pit. I'm so distant from myself and from Krishna. It could be. Same time, we don't need to make a drama of it, because we're really not that far. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We chant Hare Krishna, read one line of Prabhupada's books, and we're reawakened again. Okay, and then we might want to make a pact, a plan, to stay steadily coming alive. But it's Prabhupada emphasizes, we're never disconnected from Krishna. Maya means we forget that we're connected, but we're never disconnected. So we just connect with any of our senses in this transcendental process. And again, that's what the senses that we're designed to do. We connect with any of our senses in the transcendental process, and then we reawaken our remembrance of who we are and who we're not, and what we're meant to do. And then that's life. The downward spiral is choosing death. Prabhupada, he gives an analogy of like a knife is sharp. The knife is sharp, but it could be covered. The knife could be covered with packed dirt and mud, and then it has no potency. It has no potency to express its dharma of cutting and sharpness. So similarly, we've allowed our consciousness to become dull through indulgence in sense gratification, on the account of serving the illusion that I am this body, and by serving the body and things attached to the upadi, sarvapadi nirmuktam taparatena nirvalam, serving the upadis, and then so like our knife is dull, and then but the knife is actually sharp. It's just covered. So as we often make the distinctions between the blank slate philosophy and the diamond philosophy. So the diamond can get covered by dirt, dust, mud, different modes of material nature. And so this process of bhakti yoga, it's an uncovering process. And okay, so we're very fortunate to have this process that engages the senses. I was just speaking with someone, a client, and yeah, she was accustomed to, because like I was explaining to her, Actually, in recent sessions, we're chanting japa together. That's what coaching is for. So, she was accustomed over years and decades, to like other traditions of a particular mat. She has a particular meditation system. But and so she was really coming alive in the chanting. And then she was asking me like, okay, so so when I'm chanting, I need to pay attention to my breath, this and that. And I was like, nah, you don't need to worry about any of it. So, and she was saying, she was saying, so I need to arrange a place. I said, nah, you don't need to worry. No, of course, if we're gonna, she's committing to a number of japa rounds per day, so we be attentive. But then she was just like, she was just really amazed. Like, so this is a meditation process. Like I can be walking on the street and chanting Hare Krishna. Yeah. And I send her many quotes from Prabhupada. He goes, hey, you can be on the bus. And she works with her hands. Her work is with her hands. She said, I can be working with my hands and chanting Hare Krishna, singing. And that's meditation. I go, yep. She goes, this is different than any other meditation I've ever heard about. And she's very excited about it because it's like Nam Nama Kriba, Nija Sarva Shakti Stetrapita, Yamte Smarni Nakala. No, there's no rules and regulations. Yeah, just as much as possible. Chant and do your best, do my best to focus my power of hearing, consciousness, and mind on each word of the mantra. So it's very liberal. This is very liberal, very merciful process. And Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pacharani, Nirvishesha, Shunyavadi, Paschatya Desha Tarini. So Prabhupada, yeah, so okay, so Brahma creates the universe, Bhutva, Praliyate, right? The creation, destruction, material creation, destruction, material energy, Prakriti is eternal, but the forms it takes are temporary, and our perception of it is illusory, right? So like, this is real energy. The form of it is temporary. And if I'm thinking, I am the body, this is my house, this is my, then that's illusory. That's Maya. So Brahma, he creates the bodies of the living entities for us to use it, for us to use our senses in Krishna service. And Prabhupada, representing Brahma and Narada and Vyasadeva, Krishna, gives us a program to constantly and regularly engage our senses to come alive. And so Prabhupada specifically mentions servants like Brahmaji, Naradaji, Vyasaji, and their company become busy with the same purpose of the Lord, to reclaim the conditioned souls from the field of sense gratification and return them to the normal stage of engaging the senses in service of the Lord. All right, so sometimes Prabhupada talks about two types of devotees, the Bhajananandi and the Gostinandi. And so we're in the line of Prabhupada, we're in the line of Gostinandis, which means that like we come, it's not just like, oh, we have to do that. It's like for us to increase our inspiration and maintain it, we need to be doing things like this. We need to be doing things like this. We need to be sharing with each other. Machita man. Gita pranam bodhiyantas prosper param katyantas tamam nicham tushanti cha. That's one of the seed verses. Yes, one of the seed verses in Bhagavad Gita. That devotees just love to exchange with each other. What's your realization of Bhagavatam? Like that. So like we're not meant to try to be devotees hiding in a cave. Maybe some are. Even in our line, there are some like that, to show that like bhakti is not in a box. Following Srila Prabhupada, we get to follow. Brahmaji created the whole material universe, not for punishment, right? It's for rehabilitation, to use our senses for what they're originally designed for. That's really an amazing theme of this purport. And again, that's why like any sort of voidist, non-personal, impersonal conception of the ultimate goal, it's going to be unsatisfying because it lacks qualities, and we're persons, right? So it's like Prabhupada uses the term the Brahman effulgence. It's not that the effulgence is a quality of Brahman. No, the effulgence is Brahman, and Brahman is the effulgence, and the Brahman effulgence, it's a feature of Krishna. It's a feature of the Absolute. It's not the most encompassing feature. The most encompassing feature is Vasudeva, Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's complete. That feature is complete, and it encompasses Brahman and Paramatma and Super Soul. And so a genuine devotee is Brahman realized. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashotatina Kankshati. That's why, like in that Bhagavad Gita sequence in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about Brahma Bhuta, a Brahman realization. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashotatina Kankshati means free from material hankering and lamentation. Samasarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate pram. And then the next verse, Krishna goes to Bhakti Mam Abhijanati. And then from the Brahman stage, one comes to the pure bhakti stage. So the pure bhakti stage encompasses the Brahman stage. In fact, the devotee, it's like the bhakti yogi who's connected with Krishna steadily in devotional service. Mamcha yogi abhicharya bhakti yogi sevate sadhanan samtivate brahma bhuyaya kalpate. The devotees is Brahman realized. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Projita Janiya Yashuvaragyam Janam Charan Hetukam. Engaging in service to Vasudeva, Adhokshita, the transcendental Lord. Also, automatically one gets the knowledge and the detachment from matter that's there in Brahman realization. At the same time, we might say a devotee who's like loving Krishna isn't particularly interested in the future of Krishna, that's the Brahman effulgence, because it lacks variety and personal exchange and color and form and dance and senses coming alive. The Brahman effulgence, it lacks quality. It lacks quality. The conception is material life is full of quality and form and variety, so spiritual life must be devoid of it. Okay, and so that's we've given this analogy a lot in recent weeks. Prabhupada's analogy from the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It's like 180 degrees of the circle, and it misses the real banyan tree. It misses the other 180 degrees. Okay, so we're encouraged, yes, to cultivate Krishna consciousness and to share a common expression like about love, just in an ordinary sense. The more we give, the more we have for ourselves, right? So that's true on the transcendental platform, not speaking about material conceptions of affection. And so the more we're dedicating ourselves to share, then we're forcing ourselves to come alive. We're forcing ourselves to come alive in linking with the Parampara spirit. So I'll read this verse again. It's Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text 39. Antahiten jayataya haraye vihitanjali sarvabhuta mayo vishvam sasardedam sapurvavat. On the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the object of transcendental enjoyment for the senses of devotees, Brahma, with folded hands, began to recreate the universe full with living entities as it was previously. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your presence and listening. I welcome if anyone has any comments, realizations, or questions.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I really resonated with when you were giving the analogy, or not even analogy, but the direct description, I guess, of having a worshipful relationship with the senses. Oh, you want this? Okay, yes. I can relate so strongly. Like, yeah, like if I have, like if my senses have some desire and I say, okay, I'm not gonna do it, then there's like this, almost this like psychological torture that like my senses will start like poking at me and like you need to do this. If you don't, I'm gonna like make you feel anxious. I'm gonna make you feel this pressure, and often, like most of the time it works. Most of the time, like okay, fine, uncle, like please stop. So I can totally relate to this analogy. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. As I'm moved, encouraged by your sharing. Yeah, that's when I read Prabhupada's purport. That's the first thing right there in the first paragraph. The living entities worship the senses, and like, we don't think of it in those terms because I get this word worship. Like, I don't worship it, but yeah, that's like, that's it. Yeah, my mind directs something. My belly directs something. Yes, master. Yes. That is what I'm like. So it is worship. So yeah, it's such a perfect term that Prabhupada uses. Thank you, guys.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Ladini.
Yeah, it also, I love, like, it was really like hilarious how you spoke about this worship to the senses. And unfortunately, I could relate very much also. And then exactly like, and then like to say no to the senses, then like torture comes. So what can we do? Krishna is Rishikesha. I liked how you took it there to like Krishna is Rishikesha. And then I really love how you shared the story with your client, how she's like excited about like the meditation that you like don't really have to like sit in a secluded place, and so that's very enlivening to hear this story. And yesterday we went on Harinam to Springs, and then so we were there like doing it, and then Valerie came and she just like brought this like, wow, this is like really exciting. And sometimes that's my experience with the people like who are not like so much, like this is what we do, like kind of habit, routine. It's just like so fresh and enlivening, and also like it helps me to connect with like, this is like so special. It's like so special that we can like go for a walk and chant, or like use our hands and chant, or even like whatever, be on the computer and chant. It's like all possible. Not that I like, it's interesting because like, let's say when I answer my emails, I don't chant while doing it, but when I chant my japa, I'm able to answer emails. So obviously it's possible to like answer emails and chant, but it's possible to chant and answer emails. But anyway, I was very inspired by your story with your client.
Thank you, Ladini Shakti. Yeah. All right. Thanks for that. Yeah. So you came alive in some fresh connection with transcendence through the spirit of Valerie. She's not in any box or any have to, or this is my service, just full transcendental enthusiasm. Yes. And yes, yeah, right. And thanks for I moved to think of that client, because I mean, some might respond to, oh, that's not serious meditation. Serious meditation means you need to arrange a place and this and that. With this client, somehow she was at a point in her life and meditation career where she felt relieved that she doesn't need to make all these things and postures like that. So it was very fresh for her, and thanks for appreciating that. Moves me to a fresh appreciation too. And yes, Right, and I like your sharing, Ladini. Right, because if we if we can process email while what I'm doing is chanting japa, and I also have to do processing email. But now I'm processing email. I can't be chanting.
Exactly. I feel understood. Like, wait a minute.
Hare Krishna. Bhakta Len Cohen.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, David. Yeah, well, a couple things. Certainly, yes, you can multitask. You could be doing chanting while you're walking in the park or bird watching or doing the dishes. But it's also a matter of the quality of your chanting.
Yeah.
And that your chanting is not distracted. So I think that I don't think we should oversimplify and say, yeah, you can. There's no yes, okay. There's no right and wrong way.
Yes.
There's no specific rules for chanting, but still, in all, the quality of the chanting can be different depending on your focus and attention on it. That's one point I want to make. And the other question I had was basically, I'm thinking there are some times when it is okay to be senseless. Like what I'm wondering about is, okay, as much as we can, we want to use our senses in the service of Krishna. Yes, and we can do that many times. So if we're eating food, for example, we can only eat prasad. Okay, then we are always using our tongue in the eating capacity in the service of Krishna. We're talking, yes, we can be doing bhajans and Krishna katha rather than prajalpa and gossiping about our neighbors. So yes, we can always use our tongue in the service of Krishna. But what about the genitals? Okay. If we are a grahasta couple in our youth, yes, we're using the service of our genitals to produce Krishna conscious children. What about people that are retired, they're no longer of childbearing age? Then the idea of senselessness, I think, comes into play, because if you're having sex at that age, it's obviously you're not producing children. So then it is just for sense gratification. So then you need to be kind of austere and senseless in that sense. And if I get it wrong, tell me how we can use, how an older person who is not of child rearing age use their genitals in Krishna's service. It's a kind of a difficult and also sensitive subject, but I have to bring it up. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Len. I appreciate very much your sharing. You know, on the first point, I agree with what you say. It's consistent with my understanding of Prabhupada's teachings that, for sure, like if we want to come towards the nambas and offenseless stages of chanting and not stay in sort of like offensive, materially conscious type chanting, then we commit to a minimum number of rounds and do our best that we're attentive like that. And then, yeah, those other things, yeah, well, you can do it while you're doing this and that, where the attentiveness isn't emphasized. That's also true, and that can help bring people in, because even if our chanting isn't attentive, well, then it's still purifying. It's a beginning, but it's not meant to minimize that yeah, like for our japa rounds that we commit to do our best, whether we're walking in nature or we're sitting, do our best to be attentive and to not take it cheaply. Like, yeah, I also do email, and I have done that like that. But so those are an important interplay of principles about why, different types of guidance is given for spirit souls at different stages of commitment to the process. Especially in the early days, there's many lectures or letters from Prabhupada. He would say, you can even chant when you're on the bus, or like that, or when you're working. And so that's encouraged. And like that. And in addition, yeah, commit to a minimum number of rounds where you're doing your best, you're 100% focused. And then, okay, I appreciate what you expressed about, okay, utilizing genitals. My understanding is that, I guess my understanding, like if we get to the essence of it, the sex drive, if we get to the sex drive, apart from the use of a particular organ, the sex drive, that energy in bhakti is meant to be sublimated, not wasted. The sex drive is meant to be sublimated, and then that energy is utilized. The energy is utilized to produce fine intelligence, to produce luster, to produce spiritual shakti, to produce a spiritual intelligence that's potent and capable to make distinctions and capable to inspire others, to create an upward spiral. So there's one thing about, let's call it the bodily organs, and it's another thing about the essential energy and shakti behind the drive that can be directed materially or spiritually. Those are some thoughts I have.
Okay, so sublimate the sex drive into other more Krishna conscious areas. Put that energy, the energy of the sex drive, put it into other things that are more sattvic. That's what you're saying. Not to focus so much on the organs. In the sense of the organs, yes, okay, they can be kind of forgotten about. But the energy behind it, yeah, the organs are just material anyway.
Yeah.
But the energy of the sex drive, that's spiritual, that's eternal. And you put that energy into, that can be put into any kind of other sublimated services. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I know Mara family has a hand up. At the same time, I think at Bhakti Yoga Retreat, you had a comment on Lynn's question.
Yes, I have a quick comment on Len's question. And that's, Shri Prabhupada writes in many places how, like, when the man, like, is giving the sperm out of his body, he's, like, losing his blood. So, like, the energy of the man is, like, wasted or drained by the sexual intercourse with a woman. And then when the man, like, is capable to not do that, which don't ask me how, I have no translation. But if the man is capable of not do that, then actually the sperm is like going along the spine all the way to the brain, and that same substance is like meant to like create a fine brain tissue for like intelligence and spiritual realization. So it's like even physical that the sperm is supposed to go in the brain and not like being wasted outside. And I don't really know anything more like how to apply it practically.
Thank you, Ladini. Yeah, Prabhupada talks about that quite a bit. Bhakti George.
Hare Krishna, David. I have a question this morning. Can you clarify what is meant by the senses awakening?
Okay.
We mentioned that several times throughout the class. Yes.
The senses awaken. Thanks for that question. Okay, so because in one sense it can seem contradictory, because the senses are made of matter, matter is dead. So I appreciate your question. Okay, well, my understanding, it's really the soul, the consciousness that becomes uncovered and shines. Just like, okay, a diamond is always brilliant and effulgent, but it can be covered. So the diamond becomes uncovered and it shines. So when we perform divine austerity through not indulging the sex energy or the or any of our senses, we perform not just not indulging, but positively using for Krishna service, then the dust and the dirt of the modes of nature is cleansed. Chaito Darpana Marjan and Bhava Mahadevadini Bhaktam is cleansed. And really, the consciousness shines, the soul shines, the soul comes alive. The soul's never dead, but again, its life force can be covered. So the soul shines. And then that permeates through the senses. That permeates through the senses. So it gets into a bit of a very interesting esoteric point. So the soul originally has, the soul is a spiritual body. The soul originally has its spiritual senses. And then as we use these senses, Atashri Krishna Namini Nagavad Nabavad Graimindriya, Sevan Mukhi Jivadal Swayameva Spiratmida. As we use these senses of this body, then the senses become, let's call it, spiritually plated. And we can experience, let's say, we're engaged here, or we're in kirtan. We feel our power of hearing. We feel our very body, coming alive, even though matter is still dead. But Prabhupada uses like gold. There's gold, and then there's gold plated. And so, or iron. Iron is iron, but if we put it in the fire, it becomes red hot, white hot, like that. Iron acts like fire. So it's not that like these material senses, these eyes, this tongue, it's not that this becomes like the Chintamani atoms of the spiritual realm, Goloka Vrindavan or Vaikuntha, but they do become spiritually plated. Because they're just like an iron rod, it's still iron, but it acts like fire. So these senses act spiritually. And as the spirit soul inhabiting the body, we experience that as our soul gets uncovered and shines brightly in its natural effulgence, then we experience our very senses come alive. And that's some of the analogies Prabhupada uses. Iron acts like fire when it's like white hot, or it's not like gold, like Chintamani atoms in Vaikuntha, but it's like gold plated. So that's my understanding.
I appreciate that very much, David. It sounds like it leads to transformation, like senses awakening. It sounds like it leads to transformation within, and then we can have some experience of that outwardly. I appreciate your response very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Jude. Anything else? Okay, let's see a chat. Okay, what is this? Hare Krishna. Okay. Well, thank you all for your association. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam. Oh, Malini. Okay. Malini's doing a celebration. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.